82% of team members feel misunderstood or undervalued. So this is exactly where I like to be, teaching, communicating, helping others, realizing their aspirations. I'm so excited about shattering the glittering image and uncovering the truth about you.
Welcome back to the Intrepid Impact Leadership Show. I'm Jerry Howard, your host here on YouTube. And if you're listening on the podcast, welcome. Today we're talking about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and it's college athletics. College athletics. Why? College athletes are some of the most driven and candidly inspiring people on the planet. Think about how many people rally around those football teams and rally around the basketball teams and rally around all the other sports that happen in the, especially at the NCAA level. Well, NCAA athletics is kind of taking a hit in the last year or so. As we climbed out of COVID and resumed the games, we noticed, and I'm sure you've read about it, NCAA athletes' suicides spiking. NCAA athletics suicides spiking. Suicides, right? 25% of college athletes say that they're suffering from anxiety, depression, and burnout. 25%. That's a lot. And those are the ones that they typically have good grades. They might be on a scholarship, right? So some of the most driven individuals. And if you don't know much about the Intrepid Impact team, our consulting agency, one of our verticals is college athletics. Some of our colleagues already work with athletic teams, and we are taking a stand. We are taking a stand. The first thing we need to do when we think about college athletics is culture, right? At the Intrepid Impact team, our brand is winning. We're all about winning. And a lot of people, whether in business, college athletics, or whatever your industry is, don't necessarily know what winning is. In fact, recently I did a talk for the Small Business Administration, and I noted that winning is often the big gap in leadership. We haven't appropriately defined what winning is. Well, I'll tell you right now, if you're a college athlete, I can tell you right now, winning is peace. Winning is peace. They might tell you that they want straight A's. They might tell you that they want to improve in their metrics for performance. But I think what they're really looking for is peace. And the spike in athlete suicides is a strong indication of that very thing. So who is this message for? This message is for anyone like me. I have a high school athlete who is aspiring college athlete for football, my son. And I also have a former gymnast as a daughter she's in the ROTC at college, still very high performing, but I've witnessed them in these high stress environments, and both of them are straight A students. So we've got straight A students, we've got athletics, and one of my children is headed for probably Division I or Division II football. So it's very near and dear to my heart. So this message is for anyone that has college athletes in mind or that is working in a college. You can be the peace bearer. And in fact, we've got some scriptures that back this up too. If we read John 16:33, Jesus says, let's turn to that page. Jesus says, I have told you these things so that in me you will have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Take heart, I have overcome the world. Let's look at John 14:27. This is one of my favorites too. He says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. When Jesus, who is also God, says do not, that is not an option. It's not an option. What he's saying is do not let your heart be troubled. Why? Because he has overcome the world. Doesn't mean you won't have tribulation. In fact, he's telling you to have tribulation, that you will have tribulation, but he's going to walk with you through it. You need to pass this on to your children. It's imperative that you pass this on to your children. I imagine that the people that are watching this show are high performers or those that aspire to be so. it's likely that your children are high performers. You need to pass on to them the peace. Well, how do we do that? It starts with creating culture. And this culture can start in your home and your business, and they will carry it with them to college. We want them to think thermostat instead of thermometer, right? Looking at the slides here, how do we create a healthy culture? First thing we need is vocabulary. We need a vocabulary. A vocabulary of what? Of a healthy culture. The tools we use, created by Giant Worldwide, create that vocabulary, that language of leadership that's applicable both in the workplace and at home. What's your other vocabulary? God's Word. Jesus says, do not let your heart be troubled. Just like he said, do not steal and do not lie, right? Sounds like a command to me. So you really don't have a choice. If you're a leader of people, you do not have a choice, especially if you're a believer. How do we do this? Creating a healthy culture requires visual tools, the pictures that we use, an objective common language. What this means is, in certain circumstances, you're not going to be able to quote scripture. We need to remain culturally sensitive. Culturally sensitive. If someone shares a different faith background than you, you can use these tools to create that healthy dialogue. And if evangelism is your goal, then great. If you just want to create a healthy culture, this is the way to do it too. And it starts in your home. It starts with your children, with your athletes. Then we can have productive communication. And we're going to look at 2 tools today that really incite productive communication. And this leads to healthy cultures. Healthy cultures. That's what we need to do. It has to start in the home, right? If your home is driven by only metrics, we call that the quantitative, then you're missing it. There has to be a qualitative component. There has to be an open door that when they're off at college and they're chasing these metrics as high-performing athletes, that they can call home and say, here's where I'm struggling. Here's where I'm failing. And if you created that dialogue, that healthy language, then they will know that you'll have good guidance for them. They will know that you know them. And in a few episodes ago, actually towards the beginning of our season here, we talked about a tool called the Peace Index. The Peace Index. Why would you use this? Because Jesus says, do not let your heart be troubled and do not be afraid. He's given you a command. So if you're not managing your Peace Index, you're not following the rule. And here at Intrepid Impact Leadership, we're all about faith, leadership, and business, and it's in that order. Faith, leadership, and business, in that order. So let's start with faith. Do not let your heart be troubled. Do not be afraid. Well, how do you do that? There's stuff that we're all afraid at some point or another, right? Even Jesus, he did not walk in fear, but he certainly had his moment. Lord, please let this cup pass from me. He asked 3 times. He said, but not my will, your will. He gathered his strength, the angels attended to him, and off to the cross he went. You can do the same thing, but if you're managing your peace, using the Peace Index, and as a quick recap of that, I'm just going to take you through it. There's purpose. How good, how well are you fulfilling what you believe to be the call on your life on a daily basis? There's people. How do the people around you affect you? Are you surrounding yourself with people that lift you up? And if the answer is no, you might need new people, right? And in the workplace, maybe there's people that you feel like you know you should let go, but you don't. Because what? Maybe they're a high performer. Maybe you don't want to fill the position. But what kind of effect are they having on the other people in the organization, not just on you? Because if you're the boss, they're probably acting really good around you, way more compared to the other people. Next is place. Place doesn't just mean where you live. It means where are you spending most of your time? Maybe you're here at the Culture Mix Studios. How does this place? I just told the owner before we started that this is where I get to come and really exercise my calling. And what is that? Faith, leadership, and business, right? So this place is a place of peace for me. A place of peace. What about your home? What about your office? What about your bedroom? All these places. Your car. Do you like a clean car, and is it a mess? How much time do you spend in the car? I do a lot of driving. These are questions you have to ask, because why? Jesus says, do not let your heart be troubled. Do not be afraid. You are creating the culture that will then go off into the world when your kids leave the house. They have to be rock solid that you are rock solid for them. And if you're managing your peace so that you can be fully present, fully aware, fully capable of guiding them and leading them, right? Because if they're losing their mind, you can't lose your mind. That was my biggest problem. If you've tuned in before, you know that my weapon system is the Hulk. So when I get frustrated, hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, the Hulk emerges. The Hulk emerges. So that's not fully present in my best self. What's next? Personal health. Now this is spiritual, physical, and mental. Spiritual, physical, and mental. We have a body, which we live in. We have a soul, which is our mind, will, and emotions, our character. That's what makes you unique, is your soul. And then we have a spirit. Now, if you're a believer, your spirit is connected directly to God in our faith. So, spirit, how healthy is your spirit? Are you nourishing your spirit with God's word? Are you nourishing your spirit with God's word? The word says that it's already written on your heart. But you've got to tell your brain that. And that's why you need to be in the word. It activates what's already on your heart when you became a believer. And then your body. Are you taking care of yourself? You got to take care of yourself. Why? Because otherwise you're going to be a burden to your family at some point. For me, I love taking my elementary school kids up to the 3rd floor on piggyback rides. Sometimes they want me to do them both at the same time. So I got one kid on the front, one kid on the back, right? 2 flights of steps to the 3rd floor. Got to stay in shape for that. Got to stay in shape. So don't let my 6-pack abs make you feel a little inferior. The point is, take care of yourself. Personal health doesn't mean you look like a magazine. It means how well can you do the things that you need to do physically, mentally, and emotionally, and spiritually. And last is provision. Provision doesn't mean that you make a bunch of money all the time and you just have lots of money to throw around. Those are all great things. But how well can you meet your needs currently with what you have? With the peace of mind that you need. So this is the peace index. This is how you use this tool to manage your own peace so that you can be a thermostat and bring peace to others, particularly your family before they go off chasing NCAA athletics. You have to do it. You have to do it. You have to do it. Now, how can we have that conversation? Well, you can teach the peace index to your team and your family, but you can also do a real quick check-in every once in a while using another tool called the hope meter. The hope meter. This is an easy one to teach, and it has varying categories, right? So we look at the far left bottom where it says hopeless, right? So if someone, particularly an NCAA athlete today, is creating a permanent solution to a temporary problem, that's what we say in the suicide arena, a permanent solution to a temporary problem, they're in the hopeless category. But what gets there? Well, they feel defeated, or maybe they're miserable, burnt out, struggling, stuck, right? Just okay, optimistic, excited, and ecstatic. Ecstatic. So those are the key words that you're teaching your children and your teams. How's your hope meter today? Where are you at on the hope meter? Where are you at on the hope meter? How's your peace index? Simple, easy questions. And if you've taught these tools, again, they're created by Giant Worldwide. We use these tools to teach that language of leadership in organizations and in our own families. We all walk this out every day. Where are you at on the hope meter? How is your peace index? One of the problems I have, especially with my kids, is I get kind of preachy, right? Some of the best advice I was given was just ask one question and be quiet. So when we're talking about your team and your kids, ask one question and be quiet. So the first thing you're doing is you teach them the hope meter. Then you say, where are you at on the hope meter? Well, I'm struggling. Struggling. Wow. Okay. Tell me more about that. Think about it. If the coaches had the hope meter of these NCAA athletes and they noticed the change, could they have had this conversation? I think so. I think so. What about the peace index? Well, the peace index is the follow-up to this, right? So you start with the hope meter, figure out where they are. Oh, I'm miserable. Really? Tell me more about that. And they go into the details. Sometimes they beat around the bush, right? Nobody ever gives you the correct answer the first time you ask them. And that could be a wiring, that could be personality, it could be just insecurity. So keep asking. Oh, really? Tell me more about that. Well, let's talk about the peace index. How's your peace index? How's your purpose? How do you feel? Right? If they're an NCAA athlete and they've only done that sport because mom and dad told them they had to, I suspect that purpose is going to be off. I suspect that the people's going to be off. But again, when we think about the word here, Jesus says, do not let your heart be troubled and do not be afraid. If you didn't teach them that, if you didn't teach them the hope meter and the peace index, they have no vocabulary for it. They just don't know why. I don't know why I feel this way. I'm on a full scholarship. I should feel great, but I don't. That's why we have the peace index. It breaks it down into 5 categories. Having that conversation. And then the hope meter, perfectly. How hopeful are you today about your tomorrow? Those athletes that committed suicide, they were not hopeful about tomorrow. They felt like it was going to be worse. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. You can be the thermostat that creates change. You can be the thermostat that creates change. What if they say ecstatic? That's awesome, right? Ask them how their peace index is. Let's find out why they're ecstatic. Maybe they're operating in their perfect calling. When I'm here teaching you faith, leadership, and business, my purpose is pretty high. I know without a shadow of a doubt that's what I was called to do. All the way down to my personality wiring. If you know our 5 voices, if you've tuned in, you know that I'm a creative, connector, pioneer, nurturer, guardian. That's the voice order. So what are my superpowers? Well, creative, that's seeing the future. Connector, connecting with other people. Pioneer, getting the job done, right? So those are my 3 superpowers. What does that mean? That means I see the future of people and I help them organize a plan to get there. That's my superpower. So when I'm helping you right now, I'm in my calling and my wiring, my most natural wiring. And if you like the Myers-Briggs, that's INFJ. INFJ in the Myers-Briggs. All right, so we've got 3 categories here on the hope meter. We've got green for ecstatic, excited, optimistic. We got yellow for just okay, stuck, struggling. And then the red, burnt out. Remember, 25% of NCAA athletes, that's just NCAA guys. Think about the rest of the college students. Think about the college students that are shooting. I attended Virginia Tech back in the late 90s. Can you imagine how we felt at the shooting that occurred there in 2007? Burned out, miserable, defeated, hopeless. Hopeless is what we're trying to get out of, right? So here's what we do. Tell me where you're at on the hope meter. Well, I feel very defeated. I'm miserable. I just don't know. Okay, well, let's talk about your peace index. And then you go through the 5 categories. Chances are, if they're an NCAA athlete, it's people and purpose. Provision's probably not a big concern for them, just thinking about college students in general, you know. Some of you are more driven, or like my daughter, she's always managing her money, but she's very unique. Of course, she's my daughter, so I'm biased, but not a lot of them thinking about that. So what about personal health? Well, they're probably in good physical shape unless they're using drugs, right? But that could be a factor. If you're asking them, hey, how's your spiritual health? How's your relationship with your faith, right? It doesn't have to just be believers. I'm biased to the believers because obviously I got the Bible sitting right in front of me. But the point is are you having this conversation in a meaningful way? Well, if you taught them the peace index, they can immediately rattle this stuff off. What about place? My roommate hates me. That could come up. If they're being bullied by their roommate or by the people in their hallway or by the people in their apartment and they don't have a place to talk about that, that can drive people crazy as well. Think about it. If you've got two people, maybe one of them's an extrovert and one of them's an introvert. All right, an extrovert doesn't mean you're obnoxious and always making a bunch of noise. It just means that you get your energy from outside of yourself. But if you're an introvert and you kind of need that quiet space to recharge and you can't find it, that might make you feel pretty hopeless. One of the biggest ahas for me was learning that I'm actually an introvert when I recharge. When I'm on stage, I look very gregarious and extroverted. But knowing that very thing means that I now incorporate proper recharge moments into my life. I know that when I get off stage and after I've met everyone and I'm moving on, I'm going to hit kind of a low spot. So let's not make any hard decisions. Let's not talk about the kids' future or anything like that. Let's have simple conversations, if any, and take some recharge time. So you got to know that. You, as the leader, have to know these things. It's imperative that you create a culture that has a common language, visual tools that are easy to remember, and again, use these in your home because I guarantee you that's where you're going to have the quickest effect and you're going to have the most impact. Because you can't force your team members at work to take these tools home and use them. You can use them at work, and they might just want to turn off work when they go home. That's very common. But if you're using them at home, they're going to provide more stories, more experiences, and more energy and impact for you to share with the team. So use them in your home. Create that healthy culture that mitigates the need for those athletes and those college kids to think that they have nowhere to turn. So again, peace index, critical component of your life managing your peace. And remember, as a believer, Jesus said, do not let your hearts be. It sounds like do not steal. I'm repeating it because it's that important. He's not asking you. It's not a suggestion. He said, do not let your heart be troubled and do not be afraid. Well, how do you manage that with the peace index? How do you multiply that behavior into others, particularly your kids, especially if they're headed off to college? The hope meter. That's how you check in with them. Where are you at on the hope meter? And you know, if you know your kids, you know you can tell when they're lying. Oh, really? You're ecstatic. Cool. Tell me more about that. We always say, be interested before you're interesting. That was the best thing I ever learned was ask my kid, whether they're extrovert or introvert, I've got two of each, ask them a question and then be quiet. Let them tell the story. If they pause, that's not your turn to talk, that's them thinking. Especially if you're like me and you tend to teach on accident. Right? So, peace index, hope meter, critical components to managing your teams and your culture at work. And remember, Jesus said, in this world there will be tribulation. In the Marine Corps, we say, embrace the suck. Embrace the suck. In this world there will be tribulation, but fear not, I've overcome the world. And how do you do that? Use the peace index and the hope meter to create that culture of healthy behavior that then your kids can take with them to the NCAA world, or at least to just college and beyond, or wherever they might go. Vocations are important too. Wherever they go, they need to be the thermostat and not the thermometer. Change the world, one kid at a time. We can do it. So again, this has been an episode of Intrepid Impact Leadership here on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.
82% of team members feel misunderstood or undervalued. So this is exactly where I like to be. Teaching, communicating, helping others, realizing their aspirations. I'm so excited about shattering the glittering image and uncovering the truth about you.